Good morning, Peters Township. My name is Madi Morgan, and welcome to The Edge. As students enter high school, they begin hearing about the importance of preparing for college. They know that colleges will consider their grades, SAT scores, and extracurricular activities when they apply. However, even though they know what colleges will be looking for in them, most students don't know what to look for in a college. Figuring out which college they want to go to, or what they might want to do in college, can be overwhelming and confusing for students. Today I'm here with Miss Simmons, a guidance counselor at PTHS, to hear her insight and advice for students who have no idea how to figure out what they want to do after high school. Hello, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Okay, to start this off, just about how many students per year do you get, coming to you just, overwhelmed and freaked out that they, have no idea what to do?
I can't necessarily gauge a number, but I would say at some point throughout the high school career, I've probably talked to almost every student on my caseload, depending on what they need to do for their resume, maybe what they need to think about for a school, what their grades should be. So myself, I have about each grade level, 60 to 80 students each grade level. So I have about 300 students to myself, but there's 5 counselors. So we all have about that many students, and through the course of high school, we're really seeing students in and out. I think we get more students concerned and feeling a little overwhelmed with things in their junior year. They don't really think about things too much in their freshman and sophomore year. It really kind of hits everybody their junior year. But I really encourage students to start thinking, researching, doing all of the background stuff starting freshman year. The sooner you do things, just like homework, the sooner you do something, the easier it feels as you go through and get more information and stuff like that.
So, out of your students that you have, do you think that they, take advantage of and use the resource of guidance counselors? Do you feel like a lot of students do come to you when they're having trouble with this?
No.
Not as much as they should.
Not as much as they should, yeah. So I think that we put so much information out there and we come into the classroom so often that just that snippet of information you guys utilize, but to really dig into the application process or what college you want to do, it takes time and it takes some effort to seek out the people that really have the tools. So when you're confused about something, come ask the questions. Our doors are always open. Mrs. Lusk and Mrs. Murphy that are in front of our office, if we don't have time right that moment, they'll set up an appointment. It's really important to take that time to really think about what you want to do and where you want to go. And if you can't utilize or find the information you want through Naviance, it's really good to utilize us as counselors to do those things. So the more you take advantage of that, the better.
Okay, so you said that most of the time that you see students or that students hear information from you is when you do come into classrooms. And I know that most of the times that I have seen guidance counselors in an English class or something, they are talking about Naviance. How can students better understand how to use Naviance? Because I feel like we all know about it, but don't exactly know what to do on it.
I think the only time you really truly utilize it is when we are in the classroom with you. But it takes time to get on it, maybe in a study hall or come to the counseling office and start doing that research. Because a lot of times when you get to junior year, senior year, you want a resume. And there's a tool on Naviance to do that resume. And it's something to get on each year as you go along to pop in there and put something on your resume. So the more you utilize it and utilize it outside of just the time you see us in the classroom, it'll be better understood. So I think just actively thinking through, and it's something that you guys are so involved in so many things, so many honors classes, AP classes, activities. There's so much going on in your day that I think sometimes that Naviance piece and what we talk about a lot is on the bottom of the list, and it's okay. But taking that time and really kind of laying it all out and seeing what you have and what you need to do, and really getting in on your own. Sometimes there are things that you do have to do without a rubric or a guide. It's sometimes on you to kind of start thinking about what you want to see for your future.
Yeah. I know I've personally used Naviance maybe 2 or 3 times at home. And I've tried to figure out what's on it. I've tried to search colleges that I thought I might be interested in, but I just how can you better use that to I don't really know how to word this.
Utilize it for this process, or utilize it to kind of understand what you want out of
how to understand just the website Naviance more, because I feel like I didn't exactly know like which tabs to go to, which ones would be the most useful.
So when you get to that point and you're sitting there thinking, I'm really confused on what's going on Naviance, or what I think I'm trying to find, I can't find it, come see me. I always tell students I'm a Naviance nerd. I think it's fun. There's so much on there, but it took me just playing around. It took me, I didn't know Naviance until a few years ago when my school, before I came here, started using it. So it takes a lot of like, let's play around, let's see what buttons do. But if you ever get to that point of being stuck, which we have sat down and you have come to me, which is good, to look at those things and say, okay, how do I search a college? How do I search a career? Because the cool thing about Naviance is it kind of all ties together. You can search a career and it will give you in that breakdown of that career what majors lead to that career. And if you click on a major, it actually leads you to what schools offer that major. So if you have an idea in mind, there's so many ways that it builds to seeing what it is, but it takes time to kind of find, oh, this does this and this does that. I discovered that this year. So there's a lot of information on there. Just, you got to play around with it.
Yeah, I feel like I was just overwhelmed when I went on it. I was like trying to search majors that I was maybe interested in, and then it was just like too much information on the screen to really understand.
Yeah, and I think too is taking that first step of getting on there is a big step. But as you're on there, maybe write down some notes of like, I didn't find what I was looking for, or this part is a little overwhelming. How do I break it down smaller? So those are things, come, just like with teachers, if you're having trouble in class, don't come to a teacher and say, I don't know what this means. It's you come to the teacher and say, well, this part doesn't make sense to me. Can you explain it? So if you come prepared with a few specific questions, it's easier to direct the conversation. It's a lot easier to say, okay, you're having trouble figuring out maybe the career path. Okay, let's look under the career tab to see what's there to do that searching, right? So it's a little bit better, instead of coming and saying, I don't understand this, having some tips, which you have, coming in and saying like, I didn't know how to add this, I didn't know how to do this, which helps direct me to figure out the Naviance end for you and what makes the most sense for you.
Yeah.
Because everybody's plan and path is different. So we got to make sure that we are kind of gearing towards what you need, not necessarily what somebody else needs.
So speaking of like being able to search college majors and careers on there, is that a big part in preparing for going to college? I feel like a lot of students that I talk to, and me personally, I feel this way, that like I'm so stressed out about college because I don't know what I want to do there at all. Is that like necessary to go there knowing exactly what you want to do?
No, there's two, on Naviance, there's 2 interest inventories that will actually, once you take them, they'll give you an output of like career clusters. So like there's the health and human services, which includes like counselors, and even my sister who's a bakery, like a pastry chef, she's considered human services. So it gives you a broader idea of what careers can be where, but it also will allow you to kind of see based on your interests and classes that you've taken and things that you enjoy, maybe what you kind of want to think about as a career or a major. So that research of careers kind of helps direct you, which can also help you in planning through what electives do you want to take. And you might take an elective and be like, I know that career is not for me. So taking the electives here at school, just like here in the media department, you might take a media class and decide, I don't want to be in photography. Photography is not my avenue, but I really love broadcasting, so I'm going to continue on the broadcasting path. So taking into account trying things out. And when you take those career inventories, it gives you an idea of maybe what electives you might want to take.
So would you say that it is a smart idea to focus on the classes that you're most interested in high school? Like, is that an actual like viable resource to like help you decide what you might want to do in college?
Absolutely. In high school, I was not a science person. I wasn't bad at it, but I knew that I wasn't going into sciences. I didn't like labs. I don't like writing them up. I'm a talker. I like to talk. I like to do those types of things. So my path was more in the psychology or the history and in that kind of realm, more of that kind of stuff. And my sister, she's a pharmacist now. She loved chem, loved math. That was her path. And then my little sister was more in the fine arts. She does baking. So she focused more on the foods and nutrition class and maybe some of the art classes. So taking into consideration what you enjoy and weeding out things that you don't necessarily like can help you think about, what do I want to do next? I wasn't completely sure in high school, and I went in undecided to a college or university. There are a lot of universities that encourage students to go in undecided because at
Really?
18, you don't necessarily need to know exactly what you want to do for the rest of your life.
Okay.
I was undecided for a year and a half until they made me choose. So take into account, it's okay to be undecided.
Okay. That actually takes a lot of stress off, because I feel like most of like my peers that I talk to, like our biggest worry is just going in undecided. We think it's going to be awful, and that like we're not going to have any sort of plan for our life if we don't do that.
So going in undecided, for me, when you think about that, I had a path, a couple ideas that I liked, whether it was history education or psychology. That was really the two things that I felt most drawn towards or confident in. So I took a lot of electives in my college career that would help me decide, do I want to go the history teacher route or do I want to go the psychology counseling route? So in my first year and a half of undergrad, taking those electives really helped me decide this is the path I want to take. So being undecided for me was really helpful because it allowed me to try different classes on campus that helped me kind of plan what I wanted to do.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Are college tours like a big step towards deciding where you might want to go?
Sure.
Do you think they help a lot?
On top of like, say, knowing what major you want to do or being undecided, knowing what schools are good for what career path, seeing the school is important. It's not 100% necessary. I don't think you have to go to a school to know if you want to go there. They have online tours now and things like that. But what sold the school for me that I went to was visiting, getting a feel for the campus, seeing students walking around. I actually sat in on a few lectures and classes.
Oh, really?
So there's a lot of different ways to see a school, whether it's a big weekend get acquainted day where they host a lot of students, or you can do a one-on-one, let's take a tour of the school with one other underclassman that is from the admissions office that takes students on tours, to sitting in on classrooms to know, like, is this a place that I can see myself?
Okay. So before students even have an idea of like what colleges they would even want to tour, how should they like start planning like what size school would they want to go to? How does that like differ per student?
Sure. In the counseling office, we actually have a comparison chart, which all the things that you might want to think about, whether it's the cost of the school, the distance from home, is it in a big city, a small city, is it in a rural area, or is it in a small but like far away from like downtown Pittsburgh kind of feel. Taking all of those things into consideration and knowing, have you ever been downtown Pittsburgh? Do you like the feeling of walking city blocks and things like that? If that's okay with you, Pitt's a great city campus. If you like the city but don't like walking block to block and really want a campus feel, Duquesne might be better for you because Duquesne has its own campus. You're not walking from like a city building to a school building to a city building. So knowing those types of things and getting a feel for it is always really great. And with thinking through, like, do I want a big school or a small school, take into account how many students are here at our high school. We have about 1,400 students. Penn State has 20,000.
Oh my.
So when you take into account thinking through, like, how does our high school feel versus now take into a number a school that has, however, I don't do math, remember? How many other students are on that campus, 20,000 versus 1,400. So if that seems like a huge number, maybe looking at a medium-sized school, which might have 12 to 15,000 students. I went to St. Vincent. We had about 3,000 students, 5,000 students on campus. So it wasn't overwhelming to me, and I knew that I liked the feel of knowing who my teachers were. I had really good connections with my teachers in high school, and I felt that helped me in the process of, if I needed help, I felt okay asking. So I wanted the same type of feeling in college. So knowing that there were smaller classes, the teacher to student ratio was 15 to 1. There were only going to be about 15 kids in my class with one professor, felt really good to me. And I didn't like the idea of a 200-person lecture hall. So those are the things to think about, comparing it to how you feel here at Peters versus the numbers that you might see of undergrad students on a bigger campus.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like there's like so many factors that we can talk about whenever it comes to deciding like a location you might want to go. So we actually are going to take a little break, and we can come back to this and talk more about this after the break. Welcome back to The Edge. We just finished before the break talking about locations that we might want to go to college, so we are going to continue that and talk about some more other factors to consider whenever you're picking a college that would be right for you. So I know that my biggest issue right now I know I'm 2 years away from college, but the thing that's stressing me out the most is I can't decide. I feel like my mind keeps like changing about small college, big college, if I want to go super far away or if I just want to go an hour away from my parents. Like my mood with it changes so much. So do you still see that in like seniors who are closer to going to college?
Yes.
Really?
It's totally normal.
Oh no.
It's normal. And especially when students have an idea of what they want to do, and there's so many different options. I think the hardest thing is there's so many options of schools now. It's not just we have 5 things to pick from and you have to pick them. There's thousands upon thousands of colleges, universities, small colleges, big colleges. There's so much out there. Having so much choice makes it hard. But knowing yourself and really starting to be mindful as you go through your junior year, senior year, if you ever go on a trip without your parents, think about, okay, maybe you're traveling to Florida without your parents, thinking through, I'm far away, could I handle this for 4 years? Knowing that it's not just a drive home. Like I went an hour away from home. It was a perfect distance. I was able to get home on the weekends when I wanted to, but I felt like it was far enough away that like my mom wasn't showing up on campus, right? So taking those things into account is taking into account your relationship with your parents. What is important to you? What do you value? So it's really starting to think through like, what choices do I want to make? It's really the first time in your life that you really get to choose a choice that you are really owning, right? I feel like going through high school, you're always thinking, okay, what do my parents want to see on my transcript? What do colleges want to see on my transcript? This is the first time you're really saying, what do I want to do? And I think that is hard to process if you haven't really thought through what do you value, what do you like. So looking at colleges of what do you find important? If going to a football game is important to you, you want to look at schools that have a football team. If that type of stuff is not important to you, then you have other options. If you know that you want to get into sorority or fraternity life, those types of things, like my campus didn't have those. So it's really weighing into account what do you value and what do you want to get out of a school.
So whenever students are kind of like stressed out and feel like they can't make up their mind, what are some ways that they could like calm down and try to organize their thoughts a little better? Because I feel like it's such a big decision that sometimes it's hard to like think rationally about that.
And sometimes it's easier when college, like it's hard to get rejected from a school, but sometimes it makes your decisions easier because it's like they decided for me, right? But I've played a game with students before that they've gotten into all schools that they've chosen. They can't decide, right? I write them all down on a sticky note, fold them up, and tell them to pick one. And they pick one. I'm like, well, what do you think about that? They're like, well, I really wanted this school. I'm like, well, that's the school you should probably go to. It's really taking into consideration, if you only had one option and you pulled it out of a hat, would you be happy with that decision? That gut instinct is really what you're looking for, of knowing like, this is where I want to go. So it's really, you're picking schools that you want to go to, and you're applying to school. You wouldn't be applying to them if you didn't see yourself there. But making that final decision is the hard thing. But it's taking into account also, if I didn't go to that school, would I have wanted to? So it's thinking through some of that stuff.
Why do you think that students are so like anxious or nervous about committing to like one exact idea?
We don't want to make a wrong choice. I think there's so much as you grow up that you have to make the right decision. You have to get the grade. You have to do this, to do that. That we're afraid of failing. We're afraid of picking the wrong thing. But you make the best of any decision that you take on. And knowing that too, if I make this decision and go to this school, it's not the be all end all. Like if you get there and don't like it, transfer. If you get there and don't like it and think, oh, I should have went to that other school, reapply to that other school and transfer the next semester or the next year. But I really suggest to students to give it a year. If you're on a campus and you don't love it, or you feel that you made the wrong choice, work through that hard moment, because you might not know what could have happened if you gave up right then and there. So it's really taking the time to process through what is going on in that moment. Is it that you're homesick, or maybe your roommate's not a great roommate? Like, there's a lot of factors, right? But giving something that time is always going to be in benefit of you of making that choice. But just because you make that choice doesn't mean isn't another one around the corner.
Yeah. So you said that a lot of students sometimes feel like that whenever they end up getting to like the location of school they wanted to. How is that like kind of the same or different as like getting to a school and realizing you don't like your major? What are some ways to fix that?
Sure. I mean, a lot of schools, I would honestly, I don't know this just the statistic for certain, but I would say 65 to 70% of students change their major. And sometimes it's getting into those college classes. Maybe they're a lot more intense than they expected. Maybe they really get into it and know that like this is not my career path. Sometimes students don't understand why they're picking a major or a path. Maybe it's just their parents are a doctor, or their parents do this or do that, and they're like, oh, I can see myself doing that. But then when they actually get into it, they're like, oh, I really discovered that I like this better because I took this elective. So there's always times to shift and change. Colleges don't hold you to a major. It's just knowing there are certain majors that once you get to the school, you can't change into. There are some majors on some campuses, like Penn State, you have to start out in maybe their 6-year med program, or you have to start out in their engineering program. You can't really transfer into some of them. So there are certain ones where you have to either apply into it to start, and then maybe if it doesn't work out, move to another one. But there's always room to switch a major, change it up, if you discover that it's not something that you're interested in. But those are things like as you go, like maybe you get to junior year of your college career and you're like, I don't want this major anymore. That takes a lot of thinking and processing. Okay, what major do I want? And now how do I catch up to those credits? So it's just thinking through and taking into account what you want to do and what you want to see. But there's never a time where you can't say like, I want to change this.
Yeah. What are some ways to think about both at the same time, like what you want to major in and how you could actually make that a career path?
It takes, there are a lot of different majors and there are a lot of careers out there that sometimes you don't think that these different majors or career paths are connected. And sometimes there are careers that in 5 years, right now they don't exist, but in 5 years there's going to be these careers that we never even thought about. Everything is constantly shifting and changing and adapting. So when taking on a major or thinking through that, you might say, I really like marketing, but I also really love ceramics. How can you meld the two together? So maybe there's careers out there. It's just finding those, maybe going to like the career resource center on campus. Every campus has a way to help you find your path as well. Help you find internships. Internships are a great way early on to say, I don't love this. This major, I love the major, but what can I do with it? There's so much out there and so many different things to do that I think it's unfathomable to like sit here and be able to list everything.
Yeah. Well, going back to like while being in high school, what are some of the opportunities here? Like, I know there's, what is it, like medical mentoring or something? Would you say that those give students an advantage over other students who maybe like don't know it all?
I think it gives students an advantage in a way of if that's their career path that they're thinking about. Doing medical mentoring in high school, they actually get to go into the hospitals or shadowing a doctor or a physical therapist or whatever their thought of their career path might be. It gives them that early look before they even graduate to say like, maybe I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Maybe I do want to do this. But it's not limited to medical mentoring. That's just a class that we offer, which is a fabulous experience for students to have. But if you're interested in like engineering or tech or things like that, we have competitive tech. They compete and they build things and they do all these different things, which can help you kind of see, is this the path that I want to take? And sometimes it's joining clubs. Sometimes it's joining the different activities. It's not necessarily going to be a class tied to a grade, but there's so many opportunities to allow students to really get involved and see, is this what I want to do? And the list of clubs is just extensive here. There's so much that you guys can do. Whether it's being in the musicals and the plays, if you like theater, it's now the horticultural club. They're working on planting and understanding the environment and things like that. That can help somebody see, do I want to go into environmental science? Maybe they like environmental science and American legal systems. There's environmental law. So there's a lot of things that you can do, and finding your counselor and sitting down and saying, I like these two things, what can I do with it? Yeah. And that's a really good thing to do with your counselor as well. And it might not be on Naviance. There's so many different things out there of, let's see what do you like and how can we meld that into something that might be beneficial moving forward.
So do you think thinking about that before college, like, does that give some students an advantage or maybe like peace of mind when deciding?
Yeah, absolutely. The more you think through it, and I think the more that you take time to kind of process what's important to you, what do you like, what do you enjoy, it's ultimately going to give somebody a little bit less stress and a little bit more peace of mind, saying, I really enjoy this, I really like this, and I want to continue doing that in the future. It doesn't take away from somebody who is undecided, and it's okay to be undecided, but definitely students that really think about it and really navigate the choices they have in high school, it's going to ultimately help them moving forward.
Okay. All right, well, that kind of takes a little bit of stress off, and hopefully it does for other people who are watching. This has been all for today's episode of The Edge, and we will see you on the next episode. I feel like I should